guys, welcome back to my channel. So recently I got 3 new female mice who are all behind me right now. Hopefully you've seen the video where I introduced them to you guys. If not, I will leave it linked in the iCards and also down in the description below. But something that I do get asked, and something that I get asked especially when I bring new animals into my home, is how do I tame them, how do I get them to be as friendly as they are, and I thought I would address that and talk specifically how I bond with my mice in a video today. So maybe you're considering getting mice, or you've already gone out and got them and you're wondering how to bond with them. Hopefully in this video I can share some tips and some things that I do to bond with my mice that may help you to bond with yours too. Now mice are naturally prey species, so they may be a little bit nervous when you bring them home. Depending on where you actually get the mice from, this may vary, but naturally they are quite nervous, so this is something that you should expect. So whether you get your mice from a breeder, from a rescue, or you do get them from a pet store, which I really don't advise, this can really affect their temperament in general and will affect how they behave when you bring them home. Now mine are from a breeder, and Pearl is my most outgoing mouse. Opal is also quite outgoing, but in general all their personalities do really vary, so even from a breeder you may get a mouse that just reacts a little differently to coming home to a new environment, so it really isn't something that you can tell until you have your mice home, and you need to judge how they're behaving and how they're reacting to their new environment as to how slowly or fast you can progress with bonding with them. So all 3 of my mice have reacted a little bit differently to being in my new home environment. Pearl was really outgoing from the start and really just wanted to be handled as soon as I got her home. Pebble was completely the opposite end of the scale, and I'm still working with her, but she was very timid. The first couple of days to a week that I brought her home, didn't really want to come out, so I really didn't force anything, really didn't force trying to bond with her. Whereas Pearl on the other hand was really outgoing and really wanted me to handle her, so I gave in and I've been handling her from the first day, and Pebble is just taking a little bit more work. But you will get mice with different personalities and different levels of being outgoing, but naturally all mice are very curious, and this is something that you can use to your advantage. You also want to have a cage that is really easy to access. My cage is really not a good example of this. You either want to keep them in some sort of tank or in a bin cage that you can access from the top to have easier access to them, or one that has a really large front opening door, just so that you can get your hand in there and allow you to interact with your mice much easier than I can, because the doors on my cage are really small, so this isn't an ideal cage for bonding with mice. The timing of when you interact with your mice is also really important. You want to make sure that you're interacting with them in a way that does not disturb their sleep schedule. Mice are naturally crepuscular, which means they're awake during dawn and dusk, so if you can interact with them during these hours without having to wake them up, this is preferable because they won't get stressed out by suddenly being awake and an unfamiliar human being right next to them. Just wait for them to wake up on their own accord and then choose that time to interact with them. If you wake them up and force them to interact with you, this is only going to stress them out more and probably set you back in the bonding process. So it's in mice's nature to be naturally curious, so I'd leave them for a couple of days once you first bring them home, but then I'd start trying to bond with them, and this is something that you can do by just putting your hand in the cage and letting them investigate it. Don't move your hand, don't try and pick them up at all, just put your hand in the cage and place it flat and let them investigate it on their own terms. Most mice will eventually come up to it and sniff it. They'll probably run away, but their curiosity will get the better of them, and they'll probably come running straight back to investigate your hand a little bit more. Much bolder mice, such as Pearl, will probably step on your hand and climb all over it. I wouldn't move your hand or try to pick them up just yet. Just let them get used to the feeling of being on your hand and exploring your hand. Another thing that I do suggest when trying to get your mice used to you is to talk to them every time you come into the room. So as you're entering the room, I'd make some sort of quiet noise to make sure that they know that you're there, so that you don't startle them straight away when you're next to the cage. Talk to them as you're coming into the room, and then when you're next to the cage, talk in a really soft voice to them so as to not scare them. Another thing you can do is offer your mouse a treat. This will get them to associate your presence with something positive, such as food. For me, I eventually get them to associate the sound of me shaking the treat jar, for them to come to the front of the cage and be rewarded with a treat. Different foods will hold different values to your mice, so they may prefer one treat over another. You just have to try them and learn which ones are your mouse's favourite, and then use these to bond with your mouse. But make sure that if you are using a lot of a certain food to bond with your mice, they are healthy and they're not going to be fattening treats, so natural treats such as oats or things like that to bond with your mice so that they don't get fat. So you are going to want to keep putting your hand into the cage and just leaving it there until eventually they are comfortable with climbing all over your hand, and then you can eventually start to lift your hand up in the cage to get them used to the sensation of being picked up. If you've tried this method for a while and they're still not comfortable with being picked up, Something you can do is kind of persuade them to go into a cage item, so something like a house or a toilet roll tube. Persuade them to go into this and then use this to transport them out of the cage into a safe area where you can then begin to bond with them a little bit easier than if they're in their cage and hiding. So you can either just sit with them on a blanket on your lap, or you can sit in the bathtub with them where they can't escape and use this to practice picking them up and practice handling them and get them used to being picked up. The important thing with this whole process is to be persistent and patient. Don't get discouraged if you're making tiny baby steps every day. It's better than just assuming that they're never going to bond with you and just not trying at all, because that's not going to get you anywhere. You have to be really patient with prey species like mice and hamsters, because at the end of the day they still can get very scared of certain things. But keep being persistent and patient, and hopefully your mice will allow you to handle them easily very soon. Something else that's really important to note, especially when considering mice, is that they are naturally quite fast animals. So if you're wanting a pet that is just going to sit on your hand and look cute and cuddle with you, mice are probably not the right pet for you, because mice are just naturally fast, naturally curious, and will want to climb all over you and explore when you're handling them. So this is just something to expect. This isn't them not bonding with you, this is just mice's natural behaviour that you have to expect if you're considering getting mice. The way that you pick up your mouse is also really important. I don't ever recommend picking up a mouse by its tail. Even if you are technically doing it the correct way and picking them up by the base of the tail, this is just only going to set you back in taming them and bonding with them, because you have no control over the situation and it's just going to stress them out and set you back in the bonding process. I also don't recommend grabbing them from above unless you really have to. For example, if they're going somewhere that they shouldn't. Grabbing them from above is naturally going to be very scary to them as a prey species, so I'd avoid this at all costs and try to handle them in a way that is respectful and less stressful to them. The best way to handle a mouse is to do it on their own terms, or have one hand flat and use the other hand to gently guide them onto your hand and then scoop them up. If you do have a group of female mice like me and you find that one of the mice is a lot more confident than some of the others, I would use this to your advantage and have this mouse out when you're trying to handle the other mice, so that they can learn that everything is okay and learn from their body language and behaviour that there's nothing to be worried about, and hopefully they too will come around to being as tame and handleable as the other mouse that is already confident. It is also really important though to make sure you do give one-on-one attention to each individual mouse when it comes to taming, just so you don't get overwhelmed with all the different mice, and maybe give more attention, kind of like I did at the beginning, to the one mouse that is more confident. Some mice will need a lot more work than others, so make sure you are also giving them individual attention to make sure that they all get tame and bonded with. Once your mice are a lot more used to you, you can start getting them out a lot more regularly. They'll begin to expect this on a daily basis. Mice are highly intelligent and really benefit from a change of environment that's not their cage, and also from enrichment, and they will begin to associate you with being able to experience this. This can either be in a secure playpen, or like me, you just have them on your desk. They're a lot more conscious of height than other animals such as hamsters, so you really don't have to worry too much about them falling or jumping off of a surface like this. But I would definitely recommend that you never ever leave your animals unattended whilst they're not in their cage and they're out having playtime. At the end of the day, it may take days, weeks, or even months to tame your mice, and some mice may never be comfortable with being picked up and handled, and this is just something that you have to expect and something you have to come to terms with when owning mice. If you are wanting mice that are going to have the highest chance of being tame, I definitely would recommend going to a breeder that breeds specifically for mice to have really good temperament and will handle them from birth to make sure that they are already tame before they come home. This will just give you the best chances of having a mouse that you can interact with on a daily basis and handle, as opposed to going to somewhere like a pet store where they've never been handled their entire life and they have really poor genetics. You're less likely to get a mouse from there that is comfortable with being handled, so I definitely recommend going to a breeder or trying to find a rescue or a mouse that needs a home in your area that has already been handled. But if you are thinking about getting mice, you need to be prepared for the fact that they may not appreciate you in the same way that other animals will, and they may have to just be an observation pet, and that is perfectly okay. They are really interesting animals to own and interesting animals to just watch, and there are other ways that you can show them that you love them just by giving them new enrichment in their cage and different foods to try. So hopefully that's helped you if you have mice that you're currently trying to tame and bond with, or if you're thinking of getting mice in the future. You just have to be prepared to get mice with very different personalities and take each mice on an individual basis. Some may take a lot longer to tame than others, and that's okay. Don't forget to subscribe to see any future animal related videos from us, and we'll see you in our next video. Bye!